Okay, so starting your design project can be daunting at any times, especially if it's the first design project you're ever going to work on, with us anyway. So what we try and get you to do is start thinking about what you're doing as a process, what's going on in your head, um, so that you become a little bit more focused on your sketching activity and your designing. So what I've having thinking or I was thinking about this over the couple of days, kind of going, how best do I approach this, and what do I repeat on an annual basis? So what I've just drawn down here is this phrase of design criteria. So design criteria are the different things that we put together that puts a big fence around our design project. So in other words, uh, if we keep it too open, then there's too much leeway for us to stray into areas and get lost, and complicate the project. So what we try and do is narrow in on what is essential for the project. Now, at the start of every project, I'm just going to go through this with you. At the start of every project, you're going to have a briefing session. That briefing session in our case is a lecturer coming in and setting up a project that has learning outcomes and accessible criteria. Okay, so they're your first set of constraints for this project, and ultimately they're the ones that will define the project outputs. But in industry, your clients will always come with a briefing session as well. And that briefing session can sometimes be just, I have this idea for this, or I have a problem in this area. Can you help me solve it? But the rest after that is for you to do. And that is this whole research area here at the side. Now, there's three different phases. Uh, you need to engage in a set of research to understand, to explore, to see what's out there. So what the state of play is. From that, you extrapolate findings. You take findings out of that research that are important. So sometimes it can be some technical detail. Sometimes it can be something that a user says to you. Sometimes it can be just a comment thrown out that you kind of go, wow, that's interesting, where it actually just gives a bit of user behavior. But they're key findings. From all of this, you set up your design criteria. They're your limits on your project. And from those, then you're able to design concepts based on those design criteria. Now, that's the process we're going to go through here this morning. Um, while it's your first design project, the level of research we're going to go into is not going to be as deep as, let's say, an honors degree project. But that's why I have over here, why are we asking you to do this project? So in other words, we're going to look at the briefing that you're going to get and see what our expectations of this project is. However, for any design project, um, this is a really, really good starting point. And it comes down to the, oh, hang on, I just read, you'll see it written as the, has anybody ever seen that written down before? Five W's and a H. No? Okay. Well, that is the who, what, where, when, how, why. It's it's a quick way of getting across. Now, what I've done is I've merged two of them, and I put, instead of putting six down, I put five down because I think there's a crossover between two of them. So for any project that you're going to start off, there's a couple of things that you can start. For your project, it's going to be these two areas, right? Now, based on what Bernie has done with you yesterday, the product. You were asked yesterday to go and look for existing products in the field of salt and pepper shakers. So that's what we refer to as benchmarking. That is going out there and seeing what products are existing in this area, what different styles. Okay, so again, there could be styles. Is it in a modernist way? Is it in a postmodernist? And this is stuff that you're going to learn over the couple of years that you're here. And we'll actually do project in term two where we'll focus in on these styles. I think for this project, it'd be good just to focus in on something like modernism, keep it nice and simple, and we hit our expectations. Other things that we can look at in here is the function. How does the thing work? Um, what kind of components are in it, or what kind of use or interaction is there from a point of view of the user? So that's other things there. The aesthetic. Okay, so what the product looks like, what kind of semantics are coming off the product. So that's a way of just getting to understand the physical thing that you're having to design. And that's a really, really good place to start. Um, Now, the next one, and this is, I have this one up at the top, and this is down to philosophy, really. I'm an advocate of user-centered design. Or you'll hear other people refer to it as human-centered design. There's lots of different variations of it. But that is really, really important. And that I always write down, understand your user. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. One is by observing, and the other one is by talking. So if you communicate with these people, you find out problems, okay? And that problem can then be discussed in here. If you observe people, you get to see people's behavior around these particular products. So in other words, the next time you're sitting down at the dinner table and you can watch people using salt and pepper shakers. How do they use them? How is there certain behaviors that other people have that you don't have? Or are they used for cooking? Okay, which then brings us down to this area, which is a product environment. So it's location, um, other products um, that are related. Okay, so a good example of that is if it's to a salt and pepper shaker that's on the table, well, then it's going to have to be interacted with from all the different sides of the table. Whereas if it's a salt and pepper shaker that is related to cooking, then it's going to be up by the oven or the hob, and it's going to have different uses and different functions. Now, then we go over to this one, which is our technical detailing. And that can be down to the materials that are in it. It could be down to mechanisms or components. It could be down to, I just write down ISO, or you'll get another one called BS. Okay, so the British Standards or the International Standards Organization. So if you're using electrical products, they're going to be constrained by certain conditions and rules. And again, they come in under your technical details. Um, I was put beside materials manufacturing. So how is it being manufactured? What materials are going to be in it? Um, uh, Mechanisms, components, technology. Okay, so again, lots more information. So in the case of your project, little bits of this are going to start coming in. This one, the why, is that big existential question that we ask ourselves when we're designing any products, and this one comes down to your philosophy as a designer. Now, if you look at something like a product catalog, and you'll see hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of products in it, and you're looking at it kind of going, oh my god, the amount of plastic that is being developed or still used and so on. And you might make a decision, I don't want to be that kind of a designer that's just fueling this thing. And so we might be looking at it going, we've asked you to design a salt and pepper shaker, but you might be asking yourself, does the world actually need another salt and pepper shaker? How is this going to make a difference? So you might actually look at it from a point of view of, instead of it be just becoming a trivial product, you might look at it becoming something that is necessary. So let's say for something like salt, we know absorbs moisture. So how you keep salt dry in an area that's extremely humid might be a product that is needed. So again, that's up to you. That's the why. But I wouldn't be overly worrying about this area on this project. For me, it's about here, it's about here, and then little bits of this appearing. I think that's the expectations of this project on your half. So what's important to get on with this project? It's designing or deciding who is your user. So write down who, uh, what are you designing, where is it for, and how do you intend to do that? Okay, obviously the one that's missing out of this is when, and I always think when is a combination of a couple of these. Okay, now depending on your project, it will differ. So, does that make sense to everybody before I move on?
Yep.
Okay, so uh, over the next day or two, I want you to start thinking about your user. Who are you designing this product for? So could you go into the why and kind of go, actually, I'm going to design this product for people with specific needs that can't use a standard salt and pepper shaker? Or are you going to design this salt and pepper shaker for younger adults? Are you going to design it for older adults? Who is it for? Are you going to design it for chefs, um, amateur cooks? uh, you need to make a decision, because in truth, once you have made that decision, then it becomes very easy to make decisions, and that's what this is all about, is the ability to make a decision. um, so once you have that done, I think what is really important then is to, on your benchmark board, to really look at the styles and the type of um, uh, designs that fit with the particular user you've picked, and the area that you want to get into. Okay. Also, have a think about your location. Where is it going to be? And also, what kind of materials do you think it should be? So if you've decided it's going to be a product for older adults, that it's going to be done in a modernist style, um, then what materials fit with that particular style? Again, that should be starting to appear on your benchmark boards. So what I'm showing you is that understanding the problem before you start sketching is really important. And I think that's a key thing to do. If we go back to this is this process I'm talking about, this design process. However, what we have and we all have is perceptions. And when you get a briefing session, the first thing that starts happening is your brain should go into overdrive, coming up with ideas. Now, a lot of that is based on your perceptions of the product or the problem that exists. And the big danger with designers, and especially student designers when they're starting off, is they make a jump from here straight down into conceptualization. Now, if you do that, you're going to end up doing one of two things. I've written it down here as drawing shapes. Okay, you'll hear me refer to it as drawing shapes. You'll also hear me refer to it as drawing pictures, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that in a few minutes. But What we want you to do is to conceptualize, to work through a problem, to explore it. Because in essence, the first idea you draw down will not be the one that you'll end up designing. You're going to find a better idea. So let's get that out of the way and just get it out of our head. So now let's just clarify, what are we asking you in this project? So if you think about the projects that you have got since you started here, there's certain skills um, that we've taught you. Line weight, consistency, um, and accuracy. That's one. We've also taught you complex shapes. We've taught you perspective, lofting, and morphing. So, and we've taught you a small bit of shade and shadow. Now, the reason we have taught you all of those is that putting all those together are the tools that you need to be able to conceptualize. The difference is we are now going to progress to pens away from pencils. And the reason for that is that it forces you to draw a line. Okay, we can be a little bit tentative with our pencils. This one forces us to draw and go and make mistakes. And again, I'm going to show you that. We've also given you a product. This is lining in with our expectations. We're going to give you a product that's a very simple product, a salt and pepper shaker. We're not asking you to reinvent the wheel here. We're asking you to develop your skills. So am I looking for groundbreaking salt and pepper? No, I'm not. I'm looking for you to explore your sketching style, explore your process of sketching, of how useful it is, and to start improving and developing these skills over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't matter that it's a salt and pepper shaker, or it could be a torch, or it could be in a toothbrush. Okay, but the principle is still the same. How do I apply all these skills I've learned into a design project? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is move on to another sheet, and just to give you an idea of what we're doing. So I'll just take this now there. So now we're at this kind of notion of where do I start? Um, and that can be very, very confusing. Now, this is the process that the majority of you are used to at the moment. It's called a linear process. You're told to do A. When you're finished A, you jump to B. When you're finished B, you go to C, and then you have to go to D, and that means that you're finished. It's a linear process. It's designed to go through a certain number of steps in order to get a right protocol or a right result. The design process is a little bit different because it's always referred to as a non-linear process, because it can loop back on itself. It's when you get creativity and exploration working together. It means sometimes starting at the very beginning is not the best place to start. So in other words, if you think back, you have your perceptions of the project. So your perceptions might be up here. That idea might be up here. So why not just jump in here and draw that out, and then realize, actually, I don't know what to do after that. So now I'll go back to here, and then I got another idea comes into my head that I go up to here, and then I switch back. And that's how the design process works. It's working like our brain works. Our brain doesn't work in a linear fashion. Our brain ideas pop into our head in randomly. We get forced connections depending on what somebody says or somebody does around us, or something that we see will send our brain shooting in a different direction. Our job is to start recording what's going on in our head, because sometimes those forced connections can help us develop concept, but ideas. So the other thing that I try and get you to do, and I want you to do, is this. At the side of every one of your pages, I want you to draw a line down the side about 50 mil, 40 to 50 mil in, and break it into 3 sections. The first section is what I refer to as the sheet focus. So before you even start sketching anything on the sheet, write down what you're going to do on the sheet. I'm going to look at the salt and pepper shaker, or I'm going to look at the functionality around the salt and pepper, or I'm going to draw down a few salt and pepper shakers that I like just to start getting my hand moving. Just tell us what the focus of the sheet is. This one is points of discovery. So as you are going through this sheet and drawing stuff down, you're going to discover different things. You're going to say, oh, actually, do you know what? It could be as simple as, oh, I really like that shape I've just drawn down. Or I really think that that's raised a big question that I don't understand how these actually work or how that cap twists onto it. So you make a note of that. And they might come down in a bullet point format as you come down the page, and you might link it across into your sketchwork as you're drawing. This one is actions arising from. So in other words, based on the sheet, you're doing, your reflection that we asked you to do. This is the same principle. You can actually reflect on what you've just sketched and then put in 2, 3, might even be 1 point of, right, I need to look at, let's say, look at technical. I might say interesting form. To explore. And that might go link it up to somewhere on the page. Now, what you've done down here now is set up 2 different headings to go into the start of the next sheet. So in other words, you're not just turning over a new sheet and going, now what am I going to be drawing on this? You're actually giving yourself a little bit of focus where you can go, well, actually, I know I need to look at the technical details of that screw cap. So turn over the page, draw this on again, get your name and title down on it, right up in the top, technical details, straight over, start drawing out the technical details. So in other words, you're not sitting in front of a blank sheet waiting for it to fill up or lightning to strike your head. Now, what I'm going to show you here this morning is, first of all, the pens. So we started off, sorry, I'm just grabbing a pencil here. We started off with sketching with pencil. And one of the beauty things about pencil is that I can vary that line weight, so that you're finding those probably tough to see. But the reality is I can vary those. So if I'm doing construction lines, they they can go really, really light. But if I'm drawing outside lines, they can be dark. And that's the beauty of working with pencil. However, the downside of pencil is that I can start rubbing this out and I can get very tentative. So what we do is we get you started sketching with pencil just to get an idea of how it all works. Then we get you into pens because the pens force your hand. Now, what we try and get you to get is a set of these. They're a set of fine liner pens. And I don't know if you're able to see these, and just put them up there, but these ones go from a 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, 0.7. So what, instead of this notion of using my pencil and gradiating the line, now what we have is a 0.1, a 0.3. Oh, sorry, that was a 0.5. There's the 0.3 and a 0.7. So what we have is the very same as this. So what we try and get you doing is looking at the size of the nib and using your construction lines with, let's say, the point 1 or the 0.5 if you have one, and working up to actually sketch your product. So for example, if you start with your point 1, again, it's the same principle that we have used. Um, okay, now if you want to go back then with a point 3 or a point 5, you can get certain levels of detail lifting off the sheet. If there's internal details beginning to appear, then we can actually start playing with those. With the let's say the point 1, you can actually go at it again. Sorry, where are you kind of going? Actually, do you know what? There's level there, and might end up being some kind of a label on the side or a screw cap detail. Okay, so all of a sudden you're starting to build up these layers, and then if you go with your point 7, and you spend half your day really just, I can really silhouette this out and giving that impression of, right, that's sitting on a surface. Okay, and again, just from a shadow edge, and you can lift it. Similar, you can throw your markers at it then, based on some of the skills that we learned last week. Where you're beginning to really trying to bring a product to life again. And then let's say, for example, if the base of it is glass, we can start trying to just lift it off the page a little bit. Okay, so again, stuff that I was kind of showing you last week about um, putting down your shade gives you your depth, but you can see now what you've got using your pens is this lovely fluidy type sketching where it starts coming alive. And this is back to something that I read in a book, where sketching is a lot like being attracted to somebody. We don't pick up on perfection. It's not a human nature to pick up on perfection. We pick up on flaws in individuals, and that's what we find beautiful. Um, Sketching can be the same. If I start taking rulers to this and ellipse templates, it flattens the drawing. I know that drawing is going slightly to the right, but it's still giving an air of movement to the project. It's giving a bit of life to the project, and it becomes much more dynamic to look at. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is what I don't want you doing. And that is, I'll just use the point 1 again. When you come onto a blank page, there's a tendency for people that haven't really engaged in that front process of um, setting up your criteria. If you haven't done this, you're going to start up here your perceptions, and you're going to go down here and start drawing shapes. What I mean by drawing shapes is, and it's one thing I really hate. So just watch out. Don't get into this. I started off drawing squares, right? And you get students that, right, I just drew a square down. And then I took that square and um, I drew, I kind of just maybe put an angle there and there. And then I took another square. Do you see what and all of a sudden You have a square fill or a page filled with sheets or with shapes. But what you're doing is you're exploring form, but not thinking about your product. So all of a sudden, you've all these great shapes, but it doesn't matter whether you're doing a car, whether you're doing a salt and pepper shaker. If you start off with this process, then it's going to be tough to get into designing any type of a product. So we all know we're doing a salt and pepper shaker. So let's start thinking about that salt and pepper shaker from the beginning. So that's drawing shapes, because what will happen is you'll spend a full sheet drawing cubes, then you'll go to your next sheet and go, now I'm going to explore cylinders. And you spend a full sheet doing cylinders. And then you're going to go, I'm going to explore triangles. So you do that one out and you fill out a full sheet. And then you get to the end of sheet 3 and you go, I have no more shapes to do. uh, what am I going to do now? And then usually what happens is you're going to, oh, right, I have to do a salt and pepper shaker. And I'll go back in and I'll try and find something that looks like a salt and pepper shaker and extract it. So not a good way of designing. The other one is this kind of approach. And that is, this is my idea. I've drawn my final solution of it. And now I'm going to draw my second solution, which is uh, a simple. I'm just going on an example of one of the ones that I saw yesterday, um, which is just two cubes. Uh, one's a salt and one's a pepper. And again, just had slightly rounded edges. Now, and then you spend minutes trying to make this one look really good. Again, just to stand out. And all of a sudden you pick up a page and it usually ends up being six ideas on a page. One here, one here, one here, one here, here, and here. Why? Because you're thinking in this linear fashion. You're going from A to B to C to D, and you're drawing down the ideas in your head. Now, that's not designing. That's just getting your basic ideas out of your head. Designing is when you take that and you begin to explore it and see what possibilities are there. So what one of the big rules that I always set to students is never start up in the top left hand corner of a page, because that forces you to draw left to right, top to bottom. I would always say start in around the middle. I always start here, just maybe up left of center, and I move wherever my ideas go. Now, what I've done over the last couple of days, or I did it yesterday over a couple of hours, was start drawing down some concept sheets just to give you an idea of what I expect to see during this project. So just one second there, I grab them. So right, there's one, um, and I'm just going to talk through this sheet for a second. One thing that you will begin to notice about this is that there are a couple of ideas that are jumping out. The reason they're jumping out is because I've just put a small bit of rendering on them, just to lift them off the page, to stand them out. But I didn't start off going, well, I'm going to render this one. What I was doing, my start point, do you remember we said on this over in the top right corner, what's my focus? Now, instead of my focus being, I want to start drawing cylinders. Well, from my benchmark board, I had these little small squares that I really, really liked. And I thought, I want to explore them a little bit more. I'd like my thing to be in that kind of style, but I don't want to copy those because that's plagiarism. But it's good to take this as a good benchmark, bring it into my sketching and kind of go, well, that's kind of the shape. Maybe it's a little bit taller, but pens force you to stick with your mistakes. And those mistakes can lead you in different directions. And just to give you an idea of where I went with this, from here, I went over to here. From there, I started drawing down this direction. Uh, and I think I went back up here. I came down and I started in and drawing these ideas. So a couple of different things then started emerging as I went through. But what I was kind of doing was, well, I use this phrase, what if? So in other words, I was drawing this one. Well, what if this wasn't a flat top and it went in at the top? And I drew it down and I got, oh, don't like it. Maybe try it different for pepper. Or what happens if I actually take these lines in? Does that change the feel or style of the product? So you can see the development across and down. Um, you'll also begin to notice that I'm using up every piece of this paper. There are sketches. I'm not worried about whether I'm sketching over existing drawings. The beauty about that is that's how your brain works. Don't let kind of straight lines govern what you're going to be sketching down. Just sketch what's in your head, get it down. Don't worry about sketching over something, because if something comes out that's really important, just putting a layer of rendering to it or using your point 0.7 pens really begins to lift it off the page. um, just drawing in a few arrows that shows movement gives an idea of or draws your eye in. But you can start putting little bits of notation then on your sheet just to kind of give this idea. Well, actually, it's an idea that appeared to me on this one. Wouldn't it be really interesting if these were weighted at the bottom so that if you knock them, they'll just automatically self-write? Again, just playing with an idea of a thought process that's in your head. Okay, so let's go down through the side here. That was my focus. I said this is worth exploring. How do they differ? So how do you differentiate them? And things that came out of it that I thought were interesting were trying to incorporate two shakers into one was one thing that I thought might be really interesting. Uh, really like the simplicity of the two cylinders and magnets. So again, down here, two stainless steel cylinders with magnets in it that join together. Okay, um, differentiate the two slightly. So again, I have this up here. Oh, sorry, that's this one. So get an idea of these two, and then this form should be explored. And I've gone up to this one. I thought that could be really, really interesting as a starting point. So what I've written down is my actions, simplicity cylinders to be explored through proportion and materials. And I've also said, look at scale and proportion of this. See the arrows going back up, which lead me back up to this. So basically I'm saying to myself, this could be a really, really good starting point for a new sheet to explore this a little bit more. So what did I do? Jumped out to another sheet and up in the top right corner, little small sketch just to say, this is the one that I'm exploring on this sheet. And I started drawing and I drew a horrendous one here, but again, didn't let it get to me and just kept drawing. So in other words, with your pens, it forces you to draw down, but also giving an idea of scale. So if I just drew a cup down, that I show that I'm dealing with a little small product, not a big one, but also playing around with it, getting ideas, but also now some technical things starting to come in where I'm looking at there's a cross section of it. I'm going to go, well, if I indent this bottom and I put a hole here for the salt, well, then some salt is going to get caught here and it's not going to come out. So how can I get around that? And just, it's as the ideas are appearing to you. Again, drew these down, really liked just the combination of these. Um, but also thought, well, when it comes to the openings at the top, is it one opening, two, three, four? How do they look? And I was kind of saying, well, I like the uneven numbers of one and three, but differentiating between the pepper and the salt. Again, we kind of moving across here, and something that I drew down here was this notion that, well, I liked this top shape, but wouldn't it be really interesting if I took two of those and just turned them on their head? And I got this sketch. And as I was drawing, this notion of take it with a pinch of salt, or this one, nothing to be sneezed at. So almost having a bit of a joke around salt and pepper. And again, wouldn't it be really interesting? I put it just a note to myself. Wouldn't it be really interesting if they could be joined together? Then how these keep the condiments separate? And again, that's creating more problems for yourself. But that's what you're doing, is exploring the form. Again, brought this down to here and thought, well, instead of flipping one and putting it face down, can I begin to stack them? And I kind of, well, if I stack them, they might end up being too tall. So I flatten them and kind of did another cross section where I kind of looking at them, where the base fits into the top of the next one. And again, now I made a mistake on the rendering here. This one is a pinch of salt, and I ended up rendering it pepper. I just wasn't concentrating, but that's just a silly mistake. But the idea is that you're starting to get an idea of kind of, I'm just going to throw a real thing on this, just saying sneeze on this one and pinch on this one. Do you know what I mean? It's not, instead of saying salt and pepper. Again, working across and coming up with other ideas. So you can see this one come across to this. So the other things that kind of just wanted to point out to you is some of the shapes that I've drawn down are reminiscent of the sheets that we were doing shade on last week. So that means we can get our markers at them and kind of go, well, what did I learn last week, and can I begin to apply them across into my sketchwork? So that kind of sums up all I want to go through with you today. Um, over the next couple of days, I think it's important to set your criteria down. Uh, who and what are you designing, and why are you designing it? Um, and then when you've solidified those criteria, that you get into real design sketching. That's sketching to explore, sketching to solve, sketching in a way that your brain works, not in a linear drawing pictures type of a way.